Welcome to episode 35 of the Animorphs Read-Along broadcast. Today we're talking about book 30, The Reunion. Marco's mom is back, and it's obviously kind of a mixed blessing. Marco's thrilled that his mother is alive, but with that knowledge also comes the realization that she's still the enemy, and on some level the right thing to do is to destroy her. Turns out that since the last time they saw Visser One, she's actually been demoted and had a lot of problems. She's a sub-Visser now. They still refer to her as Visser One throughout the entire book, which, confused me. But she's a sub-Visser, and Visser 3 is out for blood. During their last encounter with her, book 15, they sort of let her get away, obviously because she's Marco's mom, and Visser 3 viewed this as a sign that she was a traitor, or at least he used it as a tool to convince other Yeerks that she was a traitor. The reason she's back on Earth is because she wants to, surprise, surprise, hurt Visser 3, because apparently these two are just super immature and hate each other's guts. So she is here to expose the Free Hork-Bajir colony because she thinks that the Council of 13 would be furious if they found out about this colony, and that Visser 3 would be demoted and she could sort of regain some of her prestige and regain her power. This is a Marco book, and it's one of the more serious Marco books that I think we've seen. Every book that involves his mother is kind of heavy and emotional, but he really is struggling with this book with this decision of whether or not to kill his mom, and it's rough. It's kind of amazing how quickly things escalate in this book, because Jake is like, okay, Tobias, Axe, and Marco can go do some reconnaissance, and then while they're there, suddenly they're having a conversation with Visser One and making a deal with her and pitting her against Visser 3, and it's this whole big, elaborate plan of manipulation, and it's very complicated, and when they actually start to put it into play, things do not go as planned. Jake and Cassie are blown up in a car and presumed dead. Nobody's where they're supposed to be, and I think one of the big themes of this book is leadership in Jake's absence. Tobias is put in charge during the reconnaissance mission. Marco is in charge of this mission to kill Visser 3 and Visser 1. And what we continually seem to be seeing is that Jake is obviously the best man for the job, but also just it's interesting to see how other characters handle these immense pressures that Jake is under all the time, and it's no wonder that Jake is changing so severely and so drastically, because being under these pressures will do that to you. There's a great moment where Marco has kind of been irresponsible with following his mother and skipping school, and Jake takes him out alone, and he says, "Marco, you're my best friend, but if you ever go off like that again, you and I will have serious problems. In the old days, I'd have said, bite me, or something equally brilliant. Now I said, okay, understood." They've had to grow up so much with these responsibilities, and they've given up so much and come so far in this war that now no one's playing games anymore. Marco talks a lot in this book, maybe a little too much, author, about the bright, clear line. It's a good way to put things because Marco's always been a good strategist, and I've referred to Marco and Rachel before as Team Ruthless. These are people who want to get from point A to point B the most efficiently, or who can see the bright, clear line. It's kind of fitting that Marco is the one who sees first this possibility of destroying both Visser 1 and Visser 3, but also horrible because he has this huge weight on his shoulders about it, and feels understandably horrific about potentially killing his mother. In the end, there's this quite elaborate plan, but Visser 3 gets away, like we all knew he would, and Visser 1 falls off a cliff, and Jake just holds him down, and they watch her fall. The big thing is that Visser 1, or sub-Visser, whoever, had spent about, 5 minutes with the Animorphs before she kind of put together that something's off here, and she eventually figures out that they're humans, and right before she falls, figures out that Marco is the one talking to her. So thank God Visser 3 is so dense, I guess. I think they also kind of were letting their guard down around Visser 1, especially Marco, who said in the book that he kind of wanted her to figure it out. He wanted her to know. He wanted to be able to say to her, "Mom, it's me." And he kind of has that moment right before she falls. This is a tragedy for Marco, and afterwards, he's kind of moping around in bed, sick for like a week. Jake visits him, but more importantly, Rachel visits him, and Rachel and Marco have this fascinating relationship where it's definitely a foundation of like a deep emotional bond, but also something like brotherly sisterly, where they're always fighting and nagging each other and picking on each other. So when Rachel says something nice to Marco, it kind of freaks him out, and vice versa. They're not supposed to be nice to each other. That's not the role that they play in their relationship. They're supposed to keep each other in check and make jokes. So Rachel comes by. They have this kind of sweet moment where she's talking to him about his mom, and they're just obviously how hard it was. And Marco eventually asks her, "What do you do when you have to make a decision and each choice is horrible? What would you do, Rachel, if it was your mom or dad or sisters?" What would you do, Sina? Me? She sighed. I guess I'd hope that someone would come along and take that decision away from me. That conversation right there is one of the big themes of these books. How do you make a decision when both choices are horrible? How do you live with yourself? So yeah, those are all my thoughts about Animorphs number 30, The Reunion. The next book is book number 31, The Conspiracy. If you want to keep up with this read-along, subscribe to this channel or follow me on Twitter, and I will see you on Monday.